to Client-Side Web Development, Lesson 17, Designing for Mobile Devices. So today we're going to talk about how design differs from standard web design, what the mobile first design philosophy is, how mobile first is important to responsive web design, how to build responsive tables and images for mobile devices, and how to use CSS columns to create a responsive design without media queries. So, designing for mobile devices, you want to treat your mobile devices like they're as important or more important than desktop devices. And the main reason for that is there are more mobile devices than desktop devices. So it makes sense that more people that reach your site will be doing it from a mobile device rather than a desktop device. Yep, and I guess I already said that. So search engines, Google started using mobile friendliness as a criterion for ranking its index in 2015. So, and there's actually a link where you can actually test to see if your site is mobile friendly. So if you go over here, this is like the developer section. Looks like they move things around a little bit. But you can actually go in here and one of these links, I think, shows you how to do that. So it looks like they changed the link since this was put up. All right, so designing effective mobile interfaces. Criteria that Google uses to measure mobile friendliness is using Flash. You want to not use Flash at all, because Flash is not mobile friendly. Configuring the viewport. You want fixed width designs, image and other box sizes, font sizes, and tappable elements. So how to configure the viewport. You configure the viewport by adding the meta, where you give the viewport a name, and then you give it, set the width to device width, and initial scale of 1. So the width equals device width tells the browser that the page should display using the device width rather than the rendered width. And the initial scale of 1 tells the browser that there should be a one-to-one relationship between device-independent pixels and CSS pixels. All right, an example of that. If we look here, notice in our HTML, our viewport is set here on line 5, where we have viewport and we give it the device width and the initial scale. All right, next we're going to just look at some things. One thing you want to avoid is fixed width designs. If you need to have a fixed width design, then you should have two versions of your page, one for desktop and one for mobile. And you never want to set the viewport to a specific width. You want to make sure that the size of any images fit inside of the design. You want to use relative widths and heights such as percentages or rems. So I'm going to go ahead and go over to our sample responsive. If you could see here, this is responsive because everything kind of collapses down to where if you're on a mobile device with a thin, with not a lot of width, it'll still look, present well as if you're on a desktop with full width. All right, you want to keep font size legible. So some things to consider to make your font size legible. You want to start with the base font size of 16 pixels or larger. Define the sizes of various elements relative to the base font size, adjust the line width, the line height to keep the text vertically legible, adjust the line length to stay between 8 and 10 words per line, and do not use more than 6, 3, or 4 font families and font sizes. You want to make your links tappable. So if you look down here, I created this tappable link so that even if you're in on a mobile size, the link is still tappable. A good way to also test, besides shrinking the screen like I did, is if you right click and go to inspect, you can actually go to mobile mode. So to see that mobile view, if you go down here at the bottom where it says toggle the device toolbar, it's the second icon from the left in your inspector. So if you click on here, you can actually change the type of device that you're on, and then you can see how clickable and how big your links are. So if I want to go ahead and change that, let's go over to like iPhone. So you can do iPhone, let's say iPhone SE. You can see how it looks on an iPhone. So this is how it would look on an iPhone. You can see this is nice and responsive. The images are pretty much set well. The columns all come out pretty nicely on there. And then you can size up to an iPad, let's say an iPad mini, still have a decent response there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close this and go back to this here. All right, simplifying layouts and navigation without sacrificing content. To simplify your layout, start with the number of columns. The ideal number of columns for a smartphone is 1. And in the next lesson, we're going to show you how to collapse your columns based on media queries. But we'll do that next chapter. We'll show you how to do that. Download speed is critical, so you always want to use JPEGs or PNGs formats for photographs, GIF or PNG formats for flat color clip art. You want to crop images to make the dimensions as small as possible. With PNG and GIF images, use a limited palette of colors. And a lot of editing programs have the Save for Web, which makes a smaller file size when you save your images. Testing mobile web pages. You want to test the following devices: small flip phones, iOS phones, Android. Windows phones don't really exist anymore, so it's a little dated. And smaller tablets on both iOS and Android. Use responsive design mode in browsers, and that's this inspect part that we talked about later. So you can flip through the various types of phone. You can go to iPhone, you can go to Pixel. So I see how it looks in the Pixel, and you can toggle through that. So understanding mobile first design, build for mobile users first and desktop users, create a default mobile design, change the focus to content, and experiment with new technologies. Like there's a lot of mobile technologies like geolocation, touchscreen interfaces, web storage, offline applications, and mobile web applications. Using responsive tables and images. So let's go ahead and look at what this is a responsive table right here. And if we go ahead and shrink it and expand it, you could see that the table shrinks and expands based on the size of the screen. So how do we do that? So if we look down here, I'm going to go to the responsive page here. this is what I did for the link. I created a class called Mobile Link to make the link, make sure it's the minimum size is 48 by 48 pixels. And then the table is all in the CSS here. So for the mobile, as you can see, I set my minimum height and width to 48 to make sure it's large enough to be tappable, according to Google. And also set a border so you can see what the tappable area of the link is. Here you have that table, the responsive table. The big thing here is making the table with 100%. So it takes the full size of the screen. So as you shrink and expand the size of the screen, the table shrinks and expands with it. And that's what gets you this. All right, I think that covers resizing the sails. Again, you want to set your table width to 100% like we did in our example. Rearranging, we'll keep going through here. You can also hide table content as you expand and contract the size of the table. We didn't do this in this example because you need to do media queries, and we're going to talk about that in the next lesson. So making images responsive. There's 3 ways to deal with to make images responsive. You want to use the images as you always would, but the secret is setting the width to something flexible and also changing what images are displayed depending on the device properties. So flexible images, so what you want to do is you want to give your image a width of 100% and a max width of 100. And then have the height automatically size itself based on that image. So that's what we're doing here in this image. So you can see this image is responsive in that it's the maximum size of the browser width, but as we size it down, you notice that it scales automatically. And this is because if we look over, let's look at how I did the image. So this is the image right here. I gave this responsive image class. And if we scroll down to responsive image, which is down here, we see that I'm using percentages for my width and max width. And then I set my height to auto. And that automatically makes this responsive so that it shrinks and expands depending on the size of the screen. Okay, the other thing you can do is you can change the images displayed with this source set and sizes. So you can display different images based on their size. So you could see this in this example, the source set example down here. Here I have my full size image, and then as I shrink it, what happens is I actually replace the image once we're down to mobile size. So here you see the image gets replaced by this, which is a much smaller image. So what you could do is, depending on the size, you can have different images that display based on the size of the width of the screen. That's what I did there. So the way that works is there's a picture element that you kind of wrap your source elements in, and then the source elements themselves have media queries built into. So this is kind of a preview of the next lesson where we talk about media queries. So let's go ahead and look at our responsive, and this is the source set section that causes the images to change. So here the background image is that large image, and that screen image is that mobile size image. So here what we do is we set these media queries so that if the width is 650 pixels or larger, it displays the large, image, and if it's 465 pixels or smaller, it displays a small image. And then we give a default background source of the background JPEG, and then we have to wrap that in this picture element. So that's this picture element. Here's the source element, what they look like, and then you have your final. You still have to have the image element here as kind of your base. So now if you look back at the style here, oh no, this pretty much does everything. So the nice thing is you don't even need CSS, but you have these media queries that cause the images to shrink or to change depending on the size of the screen. All right, so that's kind of a nice effect that you get, is changing the image that's displayed. All right, and then the last thing you want to look at is using CSS columns to create responsive designs. So if I scroll all the way down to my columns here, so here you have CSS columns here, and what I want to do, we're all the way at the bottom of the page. What we want to do is we shrink it. You'll see the columns shrink. And one of the nice things we'll see when we do media queries, you can actually reduce the number of columns. You can go from 2 columns to 1 column as you go down to a mobile device. But I'm going to demo that in the next lesson. Well, that is it for today's lesson. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, have a good day.